All right, so these are going to be my week 6 UFL power rankings. Let's get started. At number 8, we're going to have the Arlington Renegades. They're 0-5, the only team without a win, so it only makes sense for them to be down here at number 8. This week, they played the San Antonio Brahmas. They lost 25 to 15. Um, Not the best game for them. 15 points is pretty low. 25 points is not bad for their defense, but their offense has got to do better. In this game, they started down 15 to 3, and then eventually made it 15 to 15, just a little bit past halftime. So that was good there. Going into the fourth quarter, you're thinking you still got a good chance of winning this game, but then they ended up, letting up another touchdown and losing 25 to 15. But this Renegades team, the main problem is their running game. The running game kind of sucks. They had 59 total rushing yards in this game, and they gave up 190 rushing yards in this game. And they both had 24 attempts. Both teams had the same amount of attempts, um, and they had one third of the yards that the Brahmas had rushing. So that's pretty sad. Louis Perez at quarterback was really good. 26 of 36 for 270 yards and a touchdown. He just needs a lot of help. His offensive line is not great. His running game sucks. His defense is not great either. They did sign defensive back Joe Powell, who was on their team last year and was pretty good for them. So maybe he can kind of give them a boost here going forward. But with them already being 0-5, it is very unlikely that they're going to be able to make the playoffs, considering, um, the two seed right now. The 1 and 2 seeds so far in the XFL conference both are 4-1, so they're going to have to win probably all 5 of these games what they have left, and hope that the Battlehawks or Brahmas lose 4 of 5 games. So it's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to be officially eliminated from the playoffs, potentially as early as next week even. So that'd be pretty disappointing to see the defending XFL champions eliminated from playoff contention only 6 weeks into the season, but right now it's looking like a very, very real possibility. Number 7 is going to be the Houston Roughnecks. They're 1-4. Um, Obviously not one of the best teams in the league. Their only win was against the Arlington Renegades, who are the worst team in the league, in my opinion. But this week, they had to play the Birmingham Stallions, so definitely not an easy game for them. They ended up losing 32 to 9. It's pretty disappointing there. Only putting up 9 points is pretty bad. They actually have the worst offense in the league right now, averaging only 15 points per game. Um, and that very much showed this week against the Birmingham Stallions, where they only put up 9 total points. In this game, um, Reed Sinnen at quarterback was okay. 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Justin Hall had 11 receptions for 93 yards. Kiki Chisholm had 7 receptions for 88 yards. But the main problem here, their rushing game also was very, very bad compared to, kind of like the Renegades. They both had horrible running games. They had 36 total rushing yards all game long. You're not going to be winning a lot of games if you can only get 36 rushing yards from your entire team. That's pretty disappointing. And their defense has not been very good all season long. Um, Letting up 32 points here to Birmingham is obviously not a good look, and they have to be able to do better going forward. Right now, I believe they're 2 games out of the 2 seed in the USFL conference, so they're definitely still in contention there. I think probably will have to win 4 of their last 5 games as well, but maybe even winning 3 of their last 5 games and finishing 4-6 could potentially be good enough for them to get that 2 seed there in the USFL conference. But they probably need to shoot for at least going 4 and 4 or at least 5-5. So they got to go 4-5 in the next 5 games is what they have to shoot for at the bare minimum. But even then, that might not be good enough. So it's going to be difficult for them to be able to, work their way up into the playoff picture. But yeah, right now it's just not looking good. Number 6 is going to be the Memphis Showboats. They're going to jump ahead of the Houston Roughnecks here to get a little bit of movement down here. They also lost this week pretty bad, 35 to 18 versus the Michigan Panthers. They did not have Case Cookus in this game. Panthers also did not have EJ Perry, so they both played backup quarterbacks. Showboats played Troy Williams. Panthers played Danny Etling. Troy Williams did not look horrible in this game. He had quite a bit of yards. He was pretty inefficient. 19 of 37 is pretty inefficient there, but he had 248 yards and 24 rushing yards as well. So 270 total yards for him. He also had 3 passing touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions and lost a fumble. So he had a lot of yards. He was inefficient. And he had 3 touchdowns, but also had 3 turnovers. So it's kind of a different style of play than what Case Cookus was giving you. You were more electric on offense, getting 270 yards and 3 touchdowns out of the guy, but he also has a lot of mistakes, with being inefficient and only not throwing, or having 3 turnovers in this game. So I don't really know how long Case Cookus is going to be injured, but it's looking like he probably won't be back next week either. So they're going to have to roll with Troy Williams, which is not horrible, but I do think he's been so far a pretty big step down from Case Cookus. And they're kind of in the same boat there with Houston Roughnecks. They're 2 games out of the playoff picture there with 5 games left, so they're probably going to have to win 4 of the next 5 games to be able to work their way up into the playoffs. And I do have more faith in them to be able to do that than the Houston Roughnecks, but still not really, too confident in their ability to jump over the Michigan Panthers and steal that 2 seed in the USFL conference. Number 5 is going to be the DC Defenders, who are now 2-3. Pretty disappointing this week. They lost 45-12 versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. They let up 45 points, which is the most any team has let up all season long by a pretty large margin at that. They have the worst defense in the league, letting up 138 points. It's about 28 points a game. Obviously, not very good there. They also only score about 19 points a game. So they're getting outscored by about 9 points every game, which is, not a great look. But considering they lost this week by 33 points, that does, make their data a lot skewed right there, because the rest of their games have actually been fairly close. This game was just certainly not one of those games. Losing by 33 points is not a good look anywhere. They had 4 turnovers on offense, all by Jordan Ta'amu. He had 101 passing yards and a touchdown, but he also threw 3 interceptions and had a fumble. He was also only 12 of 23, pretty inefficient there. So not a good game from him at all. They started down 17-0 about halfway through the second quarter, and then ended up making it 17-12 at halftime. So that was good there. Only down by 5 going into halftime. They're only down by 8, 20-12 going into the fourth quarter. So going into that fourth quarter, they very well had a real shot at winning this game. It still did kind of feel like the Battlehawks were in control, but it was still a 1-possession game going into the fourth quarter. So very much anybody's ball game. But that fourth quarter, they kind of fell apart. They started off with a fumble, which then led to a St. Louis touchdown, and they turned it over on downs. Then St. Louis had a 75-yard touchdown in one play. They threw an interception, which led to another one-play touchdown for San Antonio. Then they had a turnover on downs. Then they punted. Then they had a blocked punt, which then led to another St. Louis touchdown. So a whole lot of issues in this fourth quarter. 2 turnover on downs, an interception, a fumble, and a blocked punt, all in the same quarter. He's, kind of insane to think about, and that's basically where this game went away from them. I mean, it was only a 1-possession game before all that happened. So, but yeah, going forward for DC, they are 2 games outside of that, outside of the 2 seed there in the XFL conference. Both St. Louis and San Antonio are 4-1, so they're going to have to jump one of those teams, which right now does not seem very likely. But I do think this team is pretty good, as even if there are 2-3 right now. Like I said, they lost by 33 points this week, but the rest of their games have been fairly close that they have lost. So I definitely have faith in this team to be able to jump up into the top 2 seed, or at least more faith in them than I do any of the other teams below them. Looking at number 4 here is going to be the Michigan Panthers, who are 3-2. Ended up winning this week 35-18 versus the Memphis Showboats. Like I said earlier, they both had backup quarterbacks playing. They had Danny Etling playing here for Michigan, who I think was pretty solid. He was 14 for 21 for 175 yards and a touchdown, so a pretty good numbers there in this game. I don't think he looked better than EJ Perry, but he definitely did not look like a bad quarterback. But the thing that kind of carried Michigan in this game was their running game. They had 160 total rushing yards, and Wes Hills had 82 yards with 3 touchdowns himself. So he had, an amazing, amazing game this week. And Matthew Colburn, their other running back here, had 68 yards and a touchdown. So 4 total uh, that touchdowns there. They had 5 touchdowns in the game. They were all rushing touchdowns. They almost had more rushing yards and passing yards. They were just amazing all game long. Their kicker, Jake Bates, was 1 for 3 in this game. He was, I believe, 6 for 6 coming into the week. Then he missed 2 of his 3 field goals in this game. They were both like almost 58-yard field goals or longer, I think. So it's definitely understandable that he missed them, but a little bit out of character for him. But overall, he's still been a very good kicker this year. Number 3 is going to be the San Antonio Brahmas here, who are 4-1. Um, so they've been doing pretty good, obviously, all year. 4-1's a really good record, tied for the number 1 seed in that XFL conference here. They won this week 25-15 over the Renegades, and I kind of already talked about them. They were started the game up 15-3, and then it got to 15-15 a little after the second half. So a little bit, they started out the game really strong and then let Arlington get back in it, but then they ended up scoring 10 more points to win that 25-15. So they finished and started the game out really well. Did not play great in the middle there, but overall, still pretty good game. Quentin Dormady was not as good this week as he was the week before, to say the least. He was not great at all in this game. 19 of 30 is pretty good. 164 yards and 1 touchdown is okay. But he threw 3 interceptions this game, which were all not good. I think one of them was a tipped pass or like right off the receiver's hand, so it's not really his fault. But the other ones were very much his fault. He did not look great in this game, but he still, through the first couple of games that he started, has definitely not looked horrible, but he's definitely looked very, very inconsistent, which does kind of, fit with what he was doing last season. Morgan Ellison for the running game here had 84 yards on 7 carries. They had 190 total rushing yards in this game. John Lovett also had 108 yards with 2 touchdowns, so they did really, really good. 180 rushing yards, on 24 carries is pretty good, I would say. It's like almost 7 yards per carry, I think. They had 3 times the amount of rushing yards that the Arlington Renegades had, which is really good. And also, Tavante Beckett on their defense was amazing in this game with 13 tackles and a forced fumble. So their defense was really good. He was a big part of that. But yeah, overall here for San Antonio, they're currently the like I said, tied for the 1 seed there in the XFL conference, 2 games ahead of the Defenders, who are number 3. So I'm feeling pretty confident that San Antonio and St. Louis are going to be these 2 XFL conference playoff teams. If anyone were to fall out below the DC Defenders there, it would probably be the San Antonio Brahmas, just because they have Quentin Dormady instead of Chase Garvis here at quarterback, and certainly has been a downgrade there. But still, I think Dormady is good enough to get this team to probably 7 wins. They go 3-2 in their last 5 games. That should be plenty enough to be the 2 seed, unless DC were to win out their last 5 games. Number 2 here is going to be the Birmingham Stallions, who are 5-0. So how about number 2 last week, which a lot of people probably disagree with, but I'm going to keep them at number 2 this week. So even though they are undefeated, have the best defense in the league, I believe they've let up only they let up about 13 points per game, which is really, really good. Their offense is not, as great as the Battlehawks, but they're still the second best offense in the league. Their point differential is, about 13 points a game, so they almost double their opponents every single game, which is really good there, obviously. But I'm still leaving them here at number 2. I think St. Louis point differential is a little bit less than 13. They average 30 points a game. They give up 19, so their point differential is 11 points a game. Birmingham's is 13 points a game. So the matchup there when they play, I believe week 7 they play. That's going to be a very good offense versus defense type of battle. But specifically this week here for Birmingham, they played amazing, won 32-9 here over the Houston Roughnecks. They did have Adrian Martinez playing in this game. He was 11 for 20 for 155 yards and a touchdown. So not the best passer, but his running game was amazing. He had 9 rushes for 138 yards. So he was amazing on the ground this week. They were missing CJ Marable in this game. He was one of the better running backs in the league this season, but they signed Larry Roundtree, who has NFL experience with the Chargers, I believe, and he had 50 yards and a touchdown this game. Ricky Person had 32 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jay Sternberg had 46 yards and a receiving touchdown there for him. So the rushing game was amazing. Had almost over 200 rushing yards on the day, and absolutely dominated the Roughnecks for the entirety of this game. And yeah, they're the number one seed here in the USFL conference. Have a 2-game lead over the 3-seeded Michigan Panthers. So, and a 4-game lead. Yeah, a 4-game lead over the 3-seeded Houston Roughnecks. So with the win in Week 6, or at least one more win, honestly, all season long, they'll probably lock up a playoff spot. But yeah, looking at number 1 here, this is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks. So like I said, they're the highest scoring offense in the league, averaging over 30 points per game, which is really good. They won 45-12 this week. Were very, very dominant, obviously, on both sides of the ball. They had 4 takeaways. Um, their offense here was amazing. They did lose Mateo Durant, injured for the rest of the season, probably, which is definitely going to hurt them a little bit, but it obviously did not hurt them at all in this game. Um, he said he should be back potentially for the playoffs, but he's going to miss at least the rest of the regular season. He was pretty good in the couple games that he did play. But ultimately, they've still been doing really good without him. AJ McCarron in this game was amazing. 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a fumble lost, but still 200 yards, 2 touchdowns is really good. Hakeem Butler had 6 receptions for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. Probably one of the best receiver performances from anybody this season. Jacob Saylor's at running back had 69 total yards and a touchdown, really good. Mike Rose on their defense had 11 tackles and an interception. He's been a really good defender there. So like I said, they were up 17-0. I said this earlier talking about with DC. They started the game up 17-0. Then it was 17-12 just before halftime, 20-12 going into the fourth quarter, and then they absolutely dominated with 3 takeaways. Well, I guess 2 takeaways and then a blocked punt there, and forced 2 turnover on downs in that fourth quarter alone. So that was amazing, amazing quarter there for St. Louis. Definitely the best singular quarter of any team all season. Probably any team, if any sort of football in a long, long time, professional football at least, because that was just an insane quarter that went their way throughout every single facet. But yeah, looking at our standings here, kind of already talked about this. The Battlehawks and Brahmas tied at 1 there. Defenders at 3, Renegades at 4, Stallions at 1, the USFL with Panthers at 2, Showboats 3, and Roughnecks at 4. So with that going over there, we probably already have the top 4 teams locked in. So we probably have our playoff teams more or less locked in, unless the Defenders or Showboats and Roughnecks decide to, win for their last 5 games at least. And then, some of these other teams have to play pretty poorly to close out the season. But I would expect to see the Battlehawks and Brahmas stay at 1 and 2 there, and the Stallions and Panthers will stay at 1 and 2 there. So, it's going to be interesting to see if these other teams can make a late season push. But right now, I would not put money on it. Looking at my quarterback power ranking, so got AJ McCarron at 1. Still, Chase Garber's at 2. Louis Perez at 3. He was really good this week to move back up here. Reed Sinnett at 4. Martinez at 5. Tiamu at 6. He was pretty bad, so he dropped a couple spots. Case Cookis at 7. EJ Perry at 8. Quentin Doherty fell a few spots. He was really good first week, so I think he was up at like 5 or 6. But he's going to drop all the way down to 9 here. Matt Corral at 10. Danny Etling at 11. Jarrett Gorentano at 12, and Troy Williams at 13. So with Etling and Williams playing their first full game this week, I don't think either one of them was really bad, but certainly could have been better. Ellings had a little bit of playing time earlier this year where he was not very good. He was a lot better in this game than he had been in previous weeks. So if he has another week like this week, he could certainly move up a couple spots. Troy Williams, certainly has the yards and touchdowns, but he also, matched his 3 touchdowns with 3 turnovers. So that's not really going to help you get very high on this list. Looking at the attendance of this week, the Brahmas, sorry, Brahmas Renegades game had over 10,000 fans there in Arlington, which is really good numbers. Stallions and Roughnecks had just about 6,000. We would like that to be a little bit higher. The Battlehawks and Defenders had over 16,000, which is really really good. Um, DC has a pretty good fan base. You'd expect them to be around that 15,000 or so every week, which is really really good there for DC. Panthers and Showboats had about 7,600, which is solid enough. If you can get most of these other teams to be at least around 7,500 at the low end, you're feeling decent about yourself. 10,000 is a good goal, but some of these teams, 10,000 is just not very realistic. We had about 10,067 on average, which is down from last week's average, but it's good to see an average of over 10,000 without, um, you know, St. Louis having a home game in that week because they kind of raised that number quite a bit. Looking at our viewership here, so kind of like last week, we had that Brahmas Renegades game and the Stallions Roughnecks game on at the same time. So there's regional broadcasting stuff there. They had 777,000 viewers on that game on Fox, which is solid numbers. I guess 7,000 or 750,000 plus is a good threshold there. Battlehawks and Defenders only had 688,000 on ESPN. You would like to see that a little bit higher. Then the Panthers and Showboats have 731,000 there on Fox. So averaging about 743,000 here is not bad. You would like to see it above the 750 mark, but it was pretty close there. A little bit down from last week's average, which is interesting. In both weeks, we're competing with NBA and NHL playoffs, so it's interesting to see how one week was, better than the other week. It's only by 30,000 viewers, so not a whole lot, but I thought it was interesting to see that a little bit of a decrease there. I'm not going to expect to see a whole lot of improvement from here on out because the NBA playoffs, as the NBA and NHL playoffs keep going on and advancing, we're going to have more important games that people are probably going to be watching there rather than watching the UFL. Maybe towards the last 2 weeks or so of the UFL season, they might get increased viewership because there's going to be few games each day for the NBA and NHL, so they're going to have more time available to watch those UFL games. But yeah, that's going to be it for the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list, and make sure to check out my NBA and NFL videos as well.